The silence of deep space held no comfort for Krithak as she studied the holographic display before her. From the command bridge of her hunting vessel, the silent strike, the veteran hunter's iridescent scales shifted through shades of deep purple, a sign of intense concentration among her species. 300 successful hunts across 17 star systems had earned her the title of Master Hunter within the Shadowclaw Collective. Yet something about this new prey species made her primary heart flutter with unease. "Display the preliminary analysis again," she commanded, her voice carrying the distinctive metallic resonance of the Varthic species. The ship's AI complied immediately, projecting a detailed breakdown of the species designated as humans. The data scrolled before her compound eyes. Bipedal mammals, originally from a planet designated as Earth. Class 3 civilization, newly admitted to the Galactic Council. No natural armor, no claws, no venom. Endoskeleton composed primarily of calcium deposits. Average lifespan of less than a century. Intelligence rated as moderate to high. Krithak's secondary heart began to beat in rhythm with her first, a sign of growing excitement among her kind. On paper, they seemed almost insultingly easy prey. Yet the rumors spreading through the hunting lodges told a different story. 3 of her fellow hunters had already abandoned their attempts to claim a human trophy, though none would speak of why. "Computer, establish connection with the Archive Master," Krithak ordered, her scaled fingers dancing across the control surface. Within moments, the weathered face of Archive Master Vektul materialized in the air before her. "Master Hunter Krithak," the ancient Varthic greeted her, his scales a pale blue of formal acknowledgement. "I presume this concerns your intended hunt of the new species." "Indeed, Archive Master. I seek your counsel. The data suggests they should be simple prey, yet I have never known Hunter Varix to abandon a hunt." She returned from Earth 3 cycles ago, refused to speak of it, and surrendered her hunting license. Vektul's scales shifted to a deep green of concern. "I advised against classifying humans based solely on their physical characteristics. Their homeworld, it defies conventional categorization. The atmospheric pressure alone would crush most species. The temperature variations are extreme enough to shatter crystalline life forms. Their oceans, composed of a universal solvent that would dissolve most exoskeletons." Krithak's scales rippled with dismissal. "Many species evolve in harsh conditions, Archive Master. It merely means they're hardy." "Hardy?" Vektul released a sound that might have been a laugh. "They call their world a garden. To them, these conditions are mild. Pleasant, even. Did you know they voluntarily expose themselves to temperatures hot enough to denature proteins for recreation? They call it sauna. They deliberately ingest compounds that would be classified as chemical weapons on most worlds because they enjoy the sensation. They call it spicy food." Krithak's scales shifted to yellow confusion. "Surely you exaggerate." "I wish I did. Their young engage in recreational activities that would qualify as endurance trials on most worlds. They call it playing. Their adults deliberately subject themselves to repeated high-impact stresses until their muscle fibers tear, then wait for them to heal stronger. They call it working out." But Krithak's scales had already begun shifting to the deep red of hunting passion. "You only make them sound more worthy as prey, Archive Master. A true challenge at last." Vektul's image flickered as he leaned forward. "You misunderstand, young one. These are not the behaviors of prey adapting to survive predators. These are the behaviors of a predator species that became so dominant on their death world that they had to invent new ways to challenge themselves. All the more reason to prove our superiority," Krithak declared. "I have selected my hunting ground, a remote research facility on one of their colony worlds. Minimal security, isolated location, perfect for demonstrating that even their hardiest specimens are no match for a master hunter." "The collective cannot stop you," Vektul said quietly, his scales now white with resignation. "But know this, humans do not think like prey. They do not yield when defeated. They adapt, they overcome, and most dangerously of all, they learn. Krithak ended the transmission, her scales now pulsing with the deep crimson of battle preparation. She had already plotted her course to the human colony world of New Horizon. The research facility there would make the perfect hunting ground, isolated enough to avoid interference, but populated enough to prove her point. As she initiated the jump sequence, Krithak reviewed her hunting loadout one final time. Adaptive camouflage mesh, neural disruptors, paralytic toxins, all the tools that had served her so well in hundreds of successful hunts. Yet, as the stars stretched into lines around her ship, she couldn't quite suppress the nagging sensation that she was missing something vital about these humans. Her ship's sensors had already identified the perfect target, Dr. Sarah Chen, lead researcher at the facility. According to the data, she spent most of her time in a laboratory studying xenobotany. Soft work, Krithak thought. Perfect prey. The master hunter had no way of knowing that Dr. Chen had grown up in a family of wilderness survival experts, spent her summers as a smoke jumper fighting forest fires to pay for college, and held 3 patents for emergency survival equipment. She also had no way of knowing that humans had a saying about assumptions, or that she was about to learn its meaning the hard way. As the silent strike sliced through hyperspace toward New Horizon, Krithak began recording her pre-hunt log, her scales glowing with anticipated triumph. Hunt log, entry 1. I will be the first to claim a human trophy, proving once and for all that the Shadowclaw Collective remains the apex predator of the galaxy. These humans will learn their place in the natural order. The log entry would later become famous in hunting circles, not for its confidence, but for its irony. The hunt for humanity was about to begin, and nothing in Krithak's 300 successful hunts had prepared her for what was to come. New Horizons binary suns were setting when Krithak initiated her infiltration of the research facility. Her adaptive camouflage mesh rippled in perfect synchronization with the deepening shadows, rendering her nearly invisible to standard detection methods. The facility itself seemed almost insultingly vulnerable. No energy barriers, no automated defense systems, just simple composite walls and primitive electronic surveillance. Primitive security for primitive prey, Krithak muttered, her scales flickering with predatory anticipation as she bypassed what passed for a perimeter alarm system. The outer fence hadn't even been electrified. The target, Dr. Chen, was working late again, just as Krithak's week of surveillance had predicted. Through the laboratory windows, Krithak could see her moving between workstations, completely unaware of the death stalking her from the shadows. Or so Krithak thought. The first warning sign came when Krithak attempted to override the laboratory's electronic lock. Instead of the expected simple resistance, her neural interface encountered what could only be described as chaos, random pattern shifts, adaptive encryption that seemed to anticipate and counter her every move. Impossible, Krithak hissed, her scales flickering with irritation. These humans were supposed to be technological infants compared to the collective. Yet somehow, a soft click behind her made Krithak freeze. Her secondary heart skipped a beat as she slowly turned her head, expecting to see security forces. Instead, she saw nothing but an innocent-looking ventilation duct. The click came again, followed by a soft, whirring sound. Too late, Krithak recognized the sound of automated systems activating. The ventilation duct suddenly spewed forth a dense cloud of particulate matter. Krithak's respiratory filters kicked in automatically, but the cloud wasn't meant to be breathed. It was marking her position, clinging to her adaptive camouflage, and rendering it useless. "Welcome to my lab," Dr. Chen's voice came through a nearby speaker, calm and collected. "I was wondering when you'd make your move. The powder coating your camouflage system. A little something I developed studying spore dispersal patterns in alien fungi. Fascinating how it seeks out and adheres to energy fields, isn't it?" Krithak's scales flashed crimson with rage. She'd been detected, marked, and worst of all lectured. "You think this changes anything, human? Your tricks cannot save you from a master hunter." Master Hunter. Chen's voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. Oh, you must be from the Shadowclaw Collective. I read about you in our xenobiology briefings. Fascinating evolutionary adaptations you have. Did you know you're not the first to try hunting here? Krithak moved swiftly through the shadows, trying to locate Chen's actual position. The others were weak. I am not. They weren't weak, Chen replied, and now her voice had an edge to it. They were smart enough to recognize a bad situation. Did any of them tell you why we built this research facility so far from the main colony? A bad feeling began to creep through Krithak's nerve clusters. To study local flora in isolation. Chen's laugh echoed through the facility. That's our cover story. This is actually a predator adaptation research center. We study the most dangerous creatures from Earth and other worlds, trying to understand how they hunt, how they adapt, and more importantly, how to counter them. The laboratory doors suddenly slid open, revealing Dr. Chen standing calmly in the center of the room. She was wearing what looked like standard research attire, but Krithak's enhanced vision could detect subtle hints of armor weave in the fabric. You've been watching me for a week, Chen continued, her stance relaxed but ready. But I've been studying your species for months. Your thermal regulation points, your pressure sensitivity nodes, your neural cluster layouts, all documented and analyzed. Krithak's combat instincts screamed danger, but her hunter's pride wouldn't let her retreat. Knowledge is not power, human. I have taken down prey 10 times your size. Size isn't everything, Chen replied, and now she was smiling. But since you mention it, computer, activate protocol Prometheus. The laboratory lights suddenly shifted to a deep ultraviolet spectrum that Krithak's species found particularly disorienting. Worse, the temperature began to rise rapidly, targeting the precise thermal threshold where Varthic scales began to lose their flexibility. Did you wonder why I work such long hours? Chen asked, donning what looked like simple safety goggles, but what Krithak's increasingly scrambled senses recognized as advanced targeting systems. I'm not just a botanist. I'm a predator adaptation specialist. My job is to understand creatures like you and develop countermeasures. Krithak launched herself at Chen, her natural weapons deployed. But the human moved with practiced precision, dodging the attack and triggering something that released a focused electromagnetic pulse, precisely calibrated to disrupt Varthic neural patterns. The thing about humans, Chen continued, circling the stunned hunter, is that we've spent our entire evolutionary history as both predator and prey. We learned early that the best defense is understanding your opponent better than they understand themselves. Krithak tried to activate her emergency teleporter. Nothing happened. Quantum field disruption grid, Chen explained almost apologetically. Can't have research specimens teleporting away after all. Now we have 2 options here. 1. You continue this hunt, and I continue demonstrating why that's a bad idea. 2. You accept an invitation to participate in our research program as a consultant rather than a specimen. We're particularly interested in understanding how your neural interface technology works. For the first time in her hunting career, Krithak felt her scales shift to the white shade of submission. This wasn't a hunt anymore, it was a demonstration. And she wasn't the one doing the teaching. How? Krithak managed to ask. How did you know I was coming? Chen's smile widened. We didn't. We're just always prepared. Humans learned long ago that the universe is full of predators. The trick isn't being the strongest, it's being the most adaptable. Now, about that consultant position. 3 standard cycles had passed since Krithak's humbling encounter at the research facility. Now, instead of adorning her hunting vessel with trophies, she found herself surrounded by data screens in a secure observation room within the Shadowclaw Collective's central archive. Her scales shifted through patterns of deep blue, the color of intense study among her kind. Play the footage again, she commanded, watching for the 100th time as humans engaged in what they called extreme sports. The Archive's eye compiled images of humans leaping from orbital platforms with nothing but primitive fabric to slow their descent, diving into crushing ocean depths on a single breath, and climbing sheer ice cliffs with minimal equipment. Analysis complete, the AI announced. Human adrenaline response continues to defy standard classification. Subject species appears to deliberately seek situations that trigger acute stress responses, resulting in physiological adaptations that exceed baseline capabilities. Krithak's scales rippled with frustration. Display comparison metrics with other known sapient species. The holographic display shifted, showing a galaxy-wide comparison of survival traits. Most species had evolved specific adaptations to their environments. Natural armor, enhanced speed, venomous capabilities. Humans, by contrast, showed none of these specialized traits. Instead, they displayed something far more dangerous: universal adaptability. Access Earth historical records, Krithak ordered. Display environmental adaptation patterns. The archives revealed a species that had flourished in every environment their world offered, from frozen tundras to scorching deserts, from ocean depths to mountain peaks. But it wasn't just their physical adaptability that caught Krithak's attention. It was their tool use. "They don't evolve to match their environment," she muttered, her scales shifting to yellow with sudden understanding. "They change the environment to match their needs." A new alert flashed across her display. A classified report from a collective scout ship that had attempted to study human military capabilities. Krithak's scales paled as she read the findings. The humans had detected the cloaked observation vessel not through advanced technology, but because a child with a primitive optical telescope had noticed weird stars moving funny and reported it to authorities. The implications were staggering. While other species relied on evolutionary advantages or technological superiority, humans leveraged something far more unpredictable: collective intelligence and shared knowledge. A child's curiosity could become a military asset. A scientist's recreational hobby could generate a breakthrough in defensive capabilities. "Display footage from Research Facility Incident Beta 7, Krithak commanded, watching again as a human mining colony repelled a Drachnid raiding party. The Drachnids, with their crystalline armor and energy weapons, should have easily overwhelmed the primitive human defenses. Instead, the miners had used their industrial equipment in ways no one had anticipated, turning mining lasers into defensive weapons and processing chemicals into improvised explosives. Humans don't think like hunters or prey," Krithak realized, speaking her thoughts aloud. "They think like survivors. Every human is potentially dangerous because they all learn from each other's experiences." She accessed another file, this one detailing a failed hunt by one of her peers. The hunter had tracked a human explorer across a desert planet, only to find that their prey had turned the harsh environment itself into a weapon. The human had survived by applying theoretical knowledge about chemistry, physics, and biology. Knowledge that had been accumulated by their entire species over generations. "Display Earth wildlife records," she ordered next. The archive showed her the predators humans had evolved alongside. Pack hunters with incredible endurance, ambush predators of enormous strength, venomous creatures of all sizes. Humans hadn't just survived these threats. They'd studied them, learned from them, and in many cases, domesticated them. Krithak's scales shifted to a deep purple of revelation as she accessed the classified records of failed hunts against humans. A pattern emerged. The more a hunter pressured them, the more humans innovated. They didn't just fight back. They learned, adapted, and shared their knowledge. Each failed hunt made them stronger, more prepared. "Computer," Krithak said slowly, "access the original classification parameters for Earth." The display showed the initial assessment: Class 3 Death World, moderate technological advancement, limited natural defenses. But that classification missed the crucial point. Earth wasn't just a death world. It was an evolutionary crucible that had produced something unprecedented. A species that could turn any environment, any tool, any piece of knowledge into a survival advantage. We've been classifying them wrong, Krithak realized, her scales now pulsing with urgent purpose. They're not prey that learn to fight back. They're not even predators in the conventional sense. They're adaptive opportunists. Every human is potentially as dangerous as the sum total of their species' accumulated knowledge and experience. A notification interrupted her research. Another hunter was preparing to target a human colony. Krithak's scales shifted to alarm patterns as she quickly composed a priority message to the collective's leadership. They needed to understand what she had learned before more hunters walked into situations they weren't prepared for. Humans don't just adapt to survive, she wrote. They adapt to thrive. They don't just overcome challenges. They actively seek them out to become stronger. And most importantly, they learn not just from their own experiences, but from each other's. In all my cycles of hunting, I have never encountered a more dangerous trait: the ability to turn any situation, no matter how dire, into an opportunity for growth and adaptation. As she sent the message, Krithak realized that her encounter with Dr. Chen hadn't just changed her understanding of humans, it had changed her understanding of what it meant to be a true apex species. The greatest predator wasn't the strongest or the fastest, but the one that could adapt to any challenge and turn it into an advantage. The hunt wasn't just over. It had never really been a hunt at all. It had been a test, and the humans had been the ones administering it. Krithak's warning came too late. As her message to the collective's leadership was still being processed, another hunting party had already initiated what would become known as the Perseus Incident, an event that would forever change how the galaxy viewed humanity. The hunting party, led by the notorious Supreme Hunter Vexkar, had chosen to target a human military transport vessel. Their reasoning was simple. Unlike civilian targets, military personnel would provide a worthy challenge. It was exactly the kind of arrogant thinking Krithak had now learned to fear. From her position in the archives, Krithak watched the incident unfold through real-time feeds. Her scales shifted to patterns of deep dread as she observed Vexkar's battle cruiser approach the human transport ship, the HFY Nightingale. "This is Supreme Hunter Vexkar of the Shadowclaw Collective." The transmission began. "Your vessel has been chosen to demonstrate the superiority of our hunting prowess. Prepare to be boarded." The human response came immediately, calm and measured. "This is Captain Sarah Martins of the HSS Nightingale. We are a medical transport vessel protected under Galactic Convention Article 7. Stand down immediately." Krithak's scales flickered with alarm. "Computer, display vessel manifest for the Nightingale." The data scrolled before her. The Nightingale was indeed a medical transport, but not just any medical transport. It was returning from a xenopathogen outbreak response, carrying a full complement of human emergency medical personnel, doctors, nurses, and medical researchers who had spent the last 3 months fighting a deadly plague on a distant colony. "Vexkar, abort," Krithak transmitted urgently. "Check their crew manifest. These aren't just soldiers." But Vexkar had already initiated the attack. His cruiser's energy nets deployed, designed to disable the human vessel's engines. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a textbook disabled prey scenario. These were not normal circumstances. The Nightingale's response was immediate and devastating. Instead of trying to escape the energy nets, the human vessel turned into them, using the electromagnetic discharge to power up what appeared to be a hastily modified medical sterilization array. The resulting burst of focused radiation struck Vexkar's ship with surgical precision, frying its neural-linked weapon systems. Fascinating adaptation of medical equipment. Captain Martinez's voice came through, still eerily calm. "We've had 3 months to study how radiation affects various alien physiologies. Shall we demonstrate what else we've learned?" Krithak watched in horror as the human vessel's external medical quarantine pods, designed for safely transporting infection victims, launched toward Vexkar's ship. But they weren't carrying patients. Each pod had been converted into a delivery system for what the humans called aggressive decontamination protocols. "You see," Martinez continued, as Vexcar's ship began reporting multiple system failures. When you spend months fighting a plague, you get very, very good at killing things on a microscopic level. Scaling up is just a matter of adjusting the dosage. The hunting party's secondary vessels moved to intervene, but the humans had anticipated this. The Nightingale's crew had apparently spent their spare time during the plague response creating what they called improvisational defense systems from their medical equipment. Surgical lasers became point defense weapons. Magnetic resonance imaging devices were repurposed into shield disruptors. Even the ship's quarantine barriers were transformed into weaponized energy fields. "This is your final warning," Martinez announced. "We are medical professionals who have spent the last 3 months watching people die despite our best efforts. We are tired, we are irritated, and we have become extremely creative at finding ways to eliminate threats to our patients. Do you really want to see what else we've learned to do with our equipment?" Krithak watched as Vexcar's mighty hunting fleet was systematically disabled by a medical transport ship, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the human talent for turning their existing tools and knowledge to new purposes. "Imagine," Martinez's voice continued, now addressing all frequencies, "what would happen if you forced us to start thinking of our medical knowledge as a weapon? Every cure we develop, every treatment we pioneer, all of it could be reversed. Would you like to discover how much we know about your biology? How many ways we can save your life, or end it?" The threat was clear, and more importantly, entirely credible. The hunters had expected to find prey. Instead, they had found a species that could transform their healing arts into devastating weapons at a moment's notice. Vexcar's surrender, when it came, was total. His scales displayed the deep white of absolute submission as he transmitted, "The hunt is cancelled." "No," Martinez corrected. "The hunt is over. Permanently. Because if anyone else tries to hunt humans, they should remember this. We're not aggressive by nature. We're adaptive. We prefer healing to hurting. But if you force us to fight, we will use everything we know, everything we have, in ways you cannot predict. And we know so very, very much about how lives work and how they end." As Krithak watched the Nightingale escort its would-be hunters to the nearest Galactic Council station, she added a final note to her report. "The true danger of humanity isn't their strength, their technology, or even their adaptability. It's their knowledge, combined with their creativity. They don't just learn, they transform what they learn in ways no other species considers possible. To hunt such beings is to risk teaching them new ways to hunt you back." The Grand Hall of the Shadowclaw Collective had never been so quiet. Krithak stood before the assembled council of master hunters, her scales a steady deep blue of absolute certainty as she delivered her final report. The recent events had forced an emergency session, the first in over 300 cycles. "Honored Council," Krithak began, her voice carrying to every corner of the ancient chamber, "I stand before you not as a master hunter, but as a witness to a fundamental shift in our understanding of the galactic order." The holographic displays activated around her, showing footage from dozens of failed hunts against humans, culminating in the now infamous Perseus incident. The assembled hunters watched in silence as the medical transport Nightingale systematically dismantled what had once been considered an elite hunting fleet. "We have made a critical error in our assessment of humanity," Krithak continued. "We classify them based on their physical capabilities, their technological level, their apparent vulnerabilities. In doing so, we fail to recognize what truly makes them dangerous, their conceptual adaptability." She gestured, and the displays shifted to show humans in various environments. Deep space construction workers casually operating in vacuum, colonists thriving on worlds that should have been lethal, scientists transforming hostile environments into habitable ones. Consider this. When we encounter a survival challenge, we evolve over generations or develop technology to overcome it. Humans, they treat every challenge as a puzzle to be solved immediately, using whatever tools and knowledge they have available. They don't wait for evolution. They force evolution through sheer ingenuity. The council stirred uneasily as Krithak displayed footage from her own encounter with Dr. Chen. This human didn't defeat me with superior strength or advanced technology. She defeated me with preparation, understanding, and the ability to transform simple research equipment into an effective defense system. "What would you have us do?" demanded Elder Hunter Varrock, his scales flickering with agitation. "Abandon our traditions. Admit that these upstarts are our superiors." "No," Krithak replied firmly. "I propose something far more radical. I suggest we learn from them." The chamber erupted in hisses of shock and protest, but Krithak's scales remained steady blue. She activated her final display, a compilation of human educational initiatives, scientific collaborations, and technological exchanges with other species. Humans don't just adapt themselves, they help others adapt. While we've been hunting them, they've been studying us, learning about us, and even developing ways to help us. Dr. Chen offered me a position as a research consultant. The Nightingale's crew provided medical treatment to their would-be hunters after disabling them. They don't seek to dominate, they seek to understand and improve. Krithak moved to the center of the chamber, her scales now shifting to the gold of profound revelation. "I propose that the Shadowclaw Collective establish a new classification for humanity, not as prey, not even as fellow predators, but as teachers." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Grand Elder Kovacs rose from her throne, her ancient scales shifting through patterns never before seen in the chamber. "Explain," she commanded simply. "Every species in the galaxy evolves to fill a niche," Krithak responded. "Humans? They adapt to fill any niche they encounter, and then they improve it. They don't just survive, they innovate. They don't just learn, they teach. Even in defending themselves against us, they taught us new ways to think about our own capabilities." She displayed one final image, the peace accord now being negotiated between the collective and the human alliance. They're not offering surrender or demanding submission. They're offering partnership, exchange of knowledge, collaborative research. They want to learn from us as much as we could learn from them. Grand Elder Kovacs' scales shifted slowly to match Krithak's gold. "You believe we should end all hunts against humans. I believe we should hunt with them, not against them. They're adaptation specialists. They're researchers. They're innovators. They could help us become better hunters by teaching us to think differently, to adapt not just physically, but conceptually." The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, scales began shifting to gold throughout the room as understanding spread. It was Grand Elder Kovacs who finally spoke the words that would be recorded in the collective's archives. "Let it be known that from this day forward, humanity is classified not as prey, not as predator, but as adaptive teachers of the galaxy. The hunts end not in defeat, but in recognition of a greater truth. Sometimes the greatest victory is learning to see with new eyes." As Krithak left the chamber that day, her comm unit chimed with a message. It was from Dr. Chen. "Heard about the council meeting. That research consultant position is still open if you're interested. We're starting a new project on cross-species adaptive technologies." Krithak's scales rippled with what humans would call amusement as she composed her reply. "When do we begin?" The last hunt had ended, but a new kind of adventure was just beginning. In trying to prove human weakness, the Shadowclaw Collective had instead discovered humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn every challenge, every encounter, every potential conflict into an opportunity for mutual growth and understanding. And somewhere on New Horizon, in a research facility that had once been a battlefield, a former hunter and a human scientist were about to begin teaching each other new ways to adapt, survive, and thrive in a galaxy that suddenly seemed full of possibilities rather than prey.